A very good afternoon and welcome to the session titled Safeguarding Against Future Cybercrime. My name is Nzinga Qunta. I'm a business news anchor in South Africa, and it's such a pleasure to be moderating this discussion. I'd like to call our panelists up, please, to be seated. First is Eric Cantor. He's the Vice Chairman and Managing Director at Moelis and Company. Josh Kennedy-White, who's the Managing Director of DivisionX. Mashal, Waqar, who is the founder and managing partner at Milestone Ventures. Yousef Al-Ulyan, who is the Vice President of Information Technology at Saudi Aramco. And finally, David Williams, who is the co-founder and CEO of Arqit. All right, thanks all so much for your time. As we know, all sectors from business to banking and financial services, government agencies and infrastructures are increasingly under the threat of systemic failure. Perhaps, Josh, I'll start with you. If you can give us an overview of the current landscape when it comes to cyber threats and how that's constantly evolving.
Yeah, thank you very much. So look, I suppose the constant in cyber threats is change. It's always a game of 10-foot walls and 12-foot ladders. The adversary is always out innovating and trying to attack. And we're seeing this in lots of areas. The adversary deploys artificial intelligence in attack, and then we play catch up and we use AI in defense. But I think the key thing that's happening is the attack surface where we can be vulnerable on a cybersecurity plane is expanding rapidly. If you think about the evolution of technology, it's not that long ago that it was mainframe computers, and then before that after that it was desktop and then mobile, and now we have this proliferation of IoT devices. I think the average house has 22. I think mine's got about 60. So I've just opened up my attack surface, so many ways where an adversary can get in. And with remote working, with the pandemic, we've seen the level of attacks and the severity of the attacks have just gone through the roof. So the cybersecurity threat is increasing at a massive rate.
Mm-hmm. Eric, I mean, you can speak about this from your experience now and your experience in government as well. From a macro standpoint, what do governments have to do in collaboration with businesses in order to ensure that they're best prepared for these cyber threats that Josh has spoken about?
Well, first of all, I come to this with the experience of having worked in the federal government in the United States in elected office for a long time. And I do think going back to maybe 3 decades, the U.S. Research expenditures really gave birth to what we now know as the modern day internet. And I think the assumptions that were made by government, certainly our government in the past, was that this was going to be an open but secure, global, interoperable platform that people could engage with in terms of the digital trade that would develop, connect each other globally. And I think the thinking back then was that there would be such pressure on less open countries that they would have trouble keeping up because of the force of this global platform, that it would be irresistible. So I just think that sort of vision has now, sort of clashed with reality. And I think that today's modern day internet is just much more fragmented, becoming much more nationalized than it originally was conceived to be as global. Mm-hmm. And so with that as the macro backdrop, I do think that businesses are going to look for a better construct, if you will, because governments do have a role in securing the cyberspace. We all have read the reports of the malicious activities of cyber criminals, the malign intent and activities of non-state actors, and in fact, it's been traced and proven that some of these actors have the blessing of states. So I do think the government comes in with a big role, and there needs to be, I think, a coalition of like-minded countries that want to see this platform mature, develop, continue as the main artery of trade. And they should come together with some best practices. And it's not necessarily to spread ideology, because I know in my country we're often accused of constantly imposing the ideas of democracy, individual liberty, and rule of law. But I'm not talking about that now. I'm talking about just a platform that can be neutral with a trusted flow of data.
All right, Yousef, I'm going to bring you in now. Just give us some insight into operational technology, what it is and what it does, and how organizations need to be aware of threats to OT that have the capacity to bring down even a country.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you for having me in this panel. I think this is the best forum to talk about future cybersecurity threat. We are in a future investment forum. Indeed, cybersecurity threat is increasing as the digitalization and the new technology comes along. I will not talk about the statistics, about number of hacks, number of spams. I think everyone can get it from the internet very easily. I will reflect on two things. One is the governance framework that we measure cybersecurity maturity, and the other aspect is how ready our operation technology to defend against the increasing threat. In the old days, if you remember, we used to use firewall to protect any assets. A simple device, you turn on, off certain ports, and as the threat increased, we moved into the air gapping techniques, and the diode technologies or devices was introduced where the traffic is limited for one way to another. I think we see today a sign of divergence from this. Why? Because as digitalization wave move in, digital solution require data to flow seamlessly from IT to OT and the other way around. And we will see two networks converging together, and we see also that the call for IT-OT converging is happening very soon. With this IT-OT converging, we will end up with two segments. One has been protected physically by the device, and one was protected with different tools. We will have two networks integrating in one with two different cybersecurity postures from each other. While IT was governed by NIST framework that has different way of controlling the cybersecurity, the OT has different standards like C2, M2, and others. We see a NIST could evolve into, with other standards from the OT, to form a new standards for the new future. A standards we call a standard for the digital era, where we could protect against the advanced cybersecurity threats from both. The other aspect is how ready the OT technologies to combat threats. One, we urge our technology partner to look into adapting the advanced cybersecurity such as whitelisting, batch management, and so on and so forth. On top of that is designed with cybersecurity in mind. I think David mentioned that their product is David mentioned that their cyber product was designed with cybersecurity in mind. Okay. So thank you for that.
Thanks. Mashal, perhaps I'll bring you in. We've spoken a lot about technology now, but we haven't really touched on people. And what's the importance, one, of diversity in thought when thinking about cybersecurity, and also the challenges that come with people being integral in cybersecurity?
You know, one of the things that we've been noticing, there's a lot of attacks, but especially as we've got new tech, like the Web3 space, there's so much development happening. We're not preparing people, even though we've got amazing apps and we're solving a lot of great problems, we're not preparing people for this new tech, right? Like, I don't know how many of you have bought an NFT. Okay, right? So we've got a couple of people who've got wallets, right? So if you have downloaded a wallet, you get a passphrase, or you're going to get like this set of words, and you're not like, if you lose it, you lose access to essentially a lot of your currency that you got. Like, that's a terrible way to build products. And even though people are used to usernames and passwords, we're started a very different way, which is secure, but then you can lose access to it, and if you do, there's no way to recover it. And we're not telling people how to use these wallets. Like, if you're signing on to other products, you have to sign a contract, right? The tech is sound, but we're not preparing people. They don't know what they're doing. And so I think there's a lack of awareness and education, and we're not thinking about masses right now. We're not thinking about people who've never interacted with tech like this before, and I think that's a big problem. So yeah, people can be the weakest link, but one from the user side, and the other side is like, as tech is getting more sophisticated, the attacks are getting more sophisticated, right? People are finding ways, and especially a lot of hackers, to socially engineer ways into really understanding who is working at what company and what protocol. And one thing we're experiencing in this space, right, is people's Slack accounts and different accounts being compromised, and people just staying there in terms of like hackers, like literally taking in a lot of critical information. And like, we're not prepared for that, right? And so I think that needs to be like focused on, because that's a major problem.
All right, David, you're going to tell us what quantum encryption is. How does it work now, and with a view to the future as well?
Thank you, Nzinga. Yes, it's a big topic. It's a pleasure to be here. And it's fascinating to see at this conference how the Vision 2030 has harnessed a whole nation to sprint towards innovation. Quantum encryption is about trying to solve a problem which needs the whole global community to come together behind a vision. The problem that we're talking about here is the threat from quantum computers. It's beyond doubt that quantum computers will be with us at some point in the next 5 to 10 years at the outside. And when that happens, we know with absolute mathematical certainty that all of the encryption that we currently use will be broken. There is therefore an existential threat to the entire world. Quantum encryption as a phrase describes a variety of techniques that might be brought to bear to solve that problem. So there are really three approaches. The first is the approach that was a logical reaction that began by NIST in the United States to try to make the current public key algorithms harder. And you do this by making the maths bigger. Two problems with that. The maths can never be proven to be safe against a quantum computer. You can't beat a doomsday math machine by making your maths a bit bigger. And secondly, the algorithms are so big that they won't run on small devices. Okay. Finally, two of the shortlisted candidates got broken this year. So that set of solutions is not mature. Yes. The second approach is to use quantum physics itself. It's a bit like using snake venom to cure a snake bite. You can send information encoded into the quantum properties of individual particles. Very fascinating technology. We began our life at Arqit in 2017 by looking at quantum hardware technology, and we invented some. The problem is hardware is not scalable. As Yousef pointed out, the world has moved to the cloud, and you can't suddenly ask the whole world to change all of its hardware and put new hardware in. So we looked at the third solution, which is a thing called symmetric encryption. Those of us who've been around a long time know that symmetric encryption keys have been carried around by military and commercial officers on hard drives and injected into computers. Now we know, and the American government has very forcefully reasserted this recently, that symmetric encryption is safe forever against quantum computers. When I say forever, I mean longer than our lives, probably a few billion years. We decided to apply the principles of quantum physics to symmetric encryption. And what we did is we virtualized quantum physics, we turned it into software, and that software makes symmetric encryption keys locally, which can never be broken. Now, Arqit's a very young company, and when we came out of stealth mode last year, a lot of people said, clearly that's rubbish, that can't possibly be true. That's impossible. Well, we quite like impossible things. But earlier this year, we published a security proof review that was done by a British government accredited research group, which proves that our keys can never be broken. So we're now implementing that software. We have already built it into firewalls with Fortinet. We're already implementing inside some cryptocurrency and digital assets type projects. Our software has been live inside the cloud environments of some cloud hyperscalers for a couple of months. And perhaps most importantly to us, several defense departments of major governments are already adopting the software. So Our answer is software that is universally scalable and applicable is ready now. You have to get ready for the threat now, and there is a solution now.
Thanks so much, David. Eric, I'm going to come back to you to just pick up on a point that David made. You're a firm that's advised governments and listed entities, among others, on transactions of over $3.5 trillion. Cybersecurity is paramount, and the risk of attack is always high. So then how does one constantly protect your clients in a way where when there's always change coming and stay ahead of those threats, besides speaking to David afterwards?
You know, it is so critical to our business at Moelis and Company that we protect the confidential data and information that we have for our clients. As you rightfully say, our capital markets, certainly in our country and all over the world, this country as well, rely upon secure data and the fact that there would be no leak of that data to alter the markets. So it couldn't be more important from that standpoint. We also have, obviously, a fiduciary duty to our clients. So as a publicly listed company on the New York Stock Exchange, we take and sit on the board, and we take it very, very seriously, our data privacy policy, our data security policy. And as you know, in the United States, there is a very active sort of check and balance, if you will, system, not just in the regulatory arena, but also in the courts. That if you are not seen as having to done the right thing, taken the proper level of care, then you can be held liable for that. So again, take it very seriously. It's like Mashal said, it comes down to the people. I think most would say, and the experts on the panel, I'm sure, would agree that when there's a breach, it's probably due to some type of human error in an environment in which I'm speaking. And so we put our employee base worldwide through continuous testing, phishing exercises, testing, password changes, and it's almost a full-time job just to keep up with what our IT department and our CISO, our Chief Systems Officer, is trying to instill a mentality in us. At the end of the day, it's a mentality. It takes the whole company. It's not just the board. It's not just an individual that is tasked with cybersecurity. It's all of us. It's about HR. It's in operations. It's in management. So it's a comprehensive effort, I think, that is taken by companies like ours when clients, including state governments, national governments, states, and state-owned entities.
Mm-hmm. Mashal, you're currently working on Web3 projects, which is essentially a better version of the internet that uses, among other things, blockchain to try and ensure more ownership and decentralization. What are the cybersecurity opportunities and challenges there?
The opportunities are a lot, and then there's a lot of challenges. So one of the challenges we're facing is a lot of accounts being hacked, right? We keep seeing some of the most successful projects in this space that are more like, you must have heard of like CryptoPunks or apes, right? We keep hearing about them being compromised because, again, there's a lot of focus and attention. And where there's media attention, there's going to be a lot of hacker attention as well. And so one of the challenges has been just making sure teams are prepared, so security responses, and making sure they're like just catching up. Swim swaps and things like that. Like there's so much of personal and sophistication where there's that really, really like, there's a lot of attention to detail that's happening, and it's scary almost, right? So preparing teams, just like being ready for that, because you got to be ready for people being compromised, and security is a mindset. You're right, like every single department, every single person in the team, regardless of even social media, like one of the biggest challenges has been social media teams being hacked, and then tweets being sent out or personal DMs on private communities or gated communities where you expect trust. And that's where a lot of hacks have been happening, because they're being compromised, messages are being sent, and then these malicious links are being used to, again, get access, right? And so that's a challenge. And that's where the opportunity is. I think there's a lot of opportunity in terms of the training side of things, in terms of the onboarding of users and experience, and building a lot of that out. And then with a lot of the new protocols that are being built, regardless of whether regardless of what protocol is being used, like there's so much of testing that's happening right now because of that open culture, right? Where we just open source everything. And that means anyone can build off on it. And that's where a lot of the opportunities are as well.
Okay. David, I'm going to come back to you. You spoke about the sovereign quantum safe encryption service that you launched and how that really deals with some of the concerns that we've discussed on this panel. What about people who aren't running governments? What about smaller businesses as well? We're going to see this kind of technology in the future in terms of protecting against cybercrime.
Well, the great news is that the breakthrough that our people made is in creating software that can be downloaded onto an F-35 fighter jet or to an IoT device and everything in between. And it's a cloud-delivered service, so anyone can buy it. Our software will be available from some of the cloud hyperscalers next year on a global basis. And so it will be available to SMEs as well as large corporations. And the opportunities that we see that are really exciting here in the Kingdom, for example, are in IoT and cloud, IoT and industrial control, where you have millions of devices being deployed, which all need to be secured. And I'm pretty convinced that Arqit is the only company in the world that has an independently assured security proof that demonstrates that we can make those devices quantum safe. And we found that organizations like STC and NEOM and Aramco are really at the forefront of thinking about how you protect industrial control. Those lessons will, in due course, apply even to small companies. And the good news is they'll be able to buy our product in the cloud next year.
All right, Josh, DivisionX works across a range of industries, boardrooms, and you offer discretion and advice while leveraging the connection that you've had over decades, right? So through that, you've got insight, quite nuanced ones, about more than most, rather, about emerging cybersecurity trends. So what insights can you share? And also, as we wrap up, what's next for cybersecurity?
Yeah, thank you very much. Look, I think the key thing, if I had to sort of tell it as a story, it's a 3-act play. It's a situation, complication, resolution. The situation, and this is across all of the industries and sectors and regions that I've worked in, the situation is we are now living in the 4th industrial revolution. It's a really exciting time. We've got everything connected, billions of users, billions of devices all connected, high availability, high uptime, high expectation. And it's delivering enormous benefits to citizens and governments, deeper services, microservices, more impactful service delivery, and it's really democratizing time and space. But just like previous industrial revolutions, the first industrial revolution required steam to give us mechanization. The second industrial revolution required electricity to give us mass production. The third industrial revolution required electronics to give us automation. And the one unifying thing about this 4th industrial revolution that we're living through is turning data into intelligence. And the fundamental thing that makes that secure is encryption. That's the situation. The complication is we are facing a quantum dawn, and David spoke about it earlier. We are facing the prospect of a universal quantum computer being able to come in and break all known encryption as we know it. So just for context, a quantum computer can do in 30 seconds what takes a classical computer 2.5 billion years to do. So what does that mean? Well, it means in the hands of a bad actor, and this is the stuff that keeps me awake at night, someone could blow up a pipeline, bring down an airline, hack a cryptocurrency, destroy financial systems, etc., virtually without being detected, and it's so asymmetrical. So that's the bad news. Now, the good news, the last act of the play, is there is someone riding in on the white horse. I actually think it's David Williams over here.
Yeah.
And there are solutions out there now. But I think the thing I would urge people to think about is the threat is real, and we need to act now. If there was, and there is, a product available now, you don't just flick a switch. Going back to your point, it's about people, process, and change. They take time to embed these things. So I would urge people to look at it on a risk and severity index to say, what's the likelihood that this is going to happen? We know it's going to happen. Not sure about when, pretty soon. What's the likely impact? It will be massive and destructive if we don't get it the right way. So now is the time to act. In fact, I was so impressed. I was going to invest in David's company. I met him 2 years ago, and I missed out, and he listed on the NASDAQ for, I think, $3 billion, and now I begged him to employ me, which he's kindly done.
Okay. So that's an announcement that you're just saying now, all right? That should be breaking news. But Yousef, when it comes to the threat of cybersecurity and our future as well, it's come up repeatedly on the panel that people are important. So what's the importance of developing ICT skills with people with workforces to ensure that the workforce is adequately equipped to provide jobs and possible cyber threats of the future? So I'm asking my question in a very difficult way. Does there need to be a pivot, and how are we going to prepare people now and the workforce of now with ICT skills for the future as well?
I think this is a really great question. We've talked enough about technology and the protections that we are looking for from protection, quantum, what have you. But we truly believe that quantum or anything else will not protect us if we don't have the right people. I told you I'm not going to share numbers, but for this time I will. I think there is about 3.4 million shortage in cybersecurity, increasing about 26% annual. So the shortage of manpower is an issue. Not only that, but I think it was mentioned that human error was a cause of incidents. Fortinet expect to have probably 80% of all incidents is due to shortage of cybersecurity professionals. So it is something that's close to our heart. I'm sure it's close to everybody else, and I would advise every organization to have it close in their hearts. What we are doing, we are hiring top talent high schoolers, and we are sending them to the top talent university to acquire a bachelor degree in cybersecurity. We have brought in a reputable university to teach in-house master degree. We have graduated more than 130 professional master of cybersecurity. But this is not all. Attrition is high. Despite all what we are doing, we are seeing a very high attrition from our cybersecurity skill sets. So what you need to do is to keep them evolved, keep them trained, and keep them interested in what you do through an in-house development program that goes from one level to another to give them something to look for.
Thank you very much.
Add on? So it's amazing you guys are doing that, because I've got a security major, and this was one of the challenges a lot of security students and professionals face is that no one is ready to hire them first year in. So that early level of training is so crucial, and I'm so glad y'all are doing that.
Thank you very much, and that's where we leave it for now. Our panel today, David Williams, the co-founder and CEO of Arqit, Eric Cantor, the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Moelis and Company, Josh Kennedy-White, the Managing Director of DivisionX and Arqit employee now that I've heard, Yousef Al-Ulyan, who's the Vice President of IT at Saudi Aramco, and Mashal Waqar, who's the Founder and Managing Partner of Milestone Ventures. Thanks so much for your time. A round of applause, please, for them as they make their way off stage.